request was to kind of limit this concentration, staff has turned around and made it possible to actually increase the number through these special use permits.
Can I ask you a question? Do y'all have people on the boards, on this particular board that's been around Daytona for a while?
Yes.
And the reason
planning board.
The reason I asked this question is when they did MLK, not MLK, MMB.
Yeah.
When they redid the street, how much did they spend on the streetscape?
Streetscape,
Yeah.
It was $1 million.
$1 million.
Right.
They look at this today, so God bless Buddy Young, because I loved it. You took $1 million to put in a street instead of putting the buildings on that street, or to help those businesses that are trying to make it down there. Looked like to me that would have been a better investment into the businesses that were down there to make the businesses viable.
Right. Well, again, we're talking logic and reason, and I'm fascinated by here is an opportunity to actually stabilize real estate investment for both commercial properties, create jobs, and also for residential properties. Instead, you have city staff fighting that, because people have said, well, city staff can be lazy, but the fact that they're actually changing the definitions and doing things, that means they're doing things. They're not apathetic and not doing anything. They're actually working to make things worse for our community. So I think it leads to the frustration of where this has now been delayed over and over and over again. The commission is confused because now they have to wrestle to get what was the original focus of the Ridgewood overlay.
And I know, having attended the Save Our Neighborhoods group, that they too were in support of what it is that you're talking about, which is now happening contrary to their wishes.
Well, US 1 is a major gateway into our city and through our city.
And you know that, I just have to say this because I have some realtor friends who just made this statement, that when they bring people into Daytona Beach, they try to avoid Ridgewood Avenue.
Well, and in saying that, Gwen, it's important because then if there's a focus to try to redevelop MLK or 2nd Avenue or Beach Street, that will never happen if people have this perception of US 1 as Beirut. They are not going to turn 2 more blocks over to go to those other streets. And until we deal with, I believe until we deal with the US 1 issue and the perception that people feel it's a reflection of our downtown community. And to have staff, how many also overlays would you want in your neighborhood? Because I was told, well, they can do the zoning later. But that means if someone was looking at property on US 1 or to buy a house, for example, and there's 4 different overlays, it gets too bureaucratic and too convoluted that people just say, oh, my head hurts, and I'll go look somewhere else. And these are important issues that, we need to look at. And I think where my neighborhood stands is we're all very both confused and frustrated that this has dragged on for a long time. But then when you're telling me about the urban renewal process that's happened, it's no different than that's what's happened elsewhere. And at one of the commission meetings when they were voting on the redevelopment area, they had a fellow speaking who was from Midtown and said, 40 years, you keep saying you're going to do things in Midtown. We keep hearing it, and all we keep getting is lip service. Well, I can tell you I've only been here 5 years, and I feel like, oh my God. It's like, when are things good? You can't say that Daytona Beach is in a crisis or a tipping point and not do anything to change it for the better. It's like having a flat tire. What are you going to stare and look at it? Sooner or later, you got to change it. And so,
I'll put some air in it or something.
Or something. But the thing is, we're paying staff a lot of money, and I think we're not really getting much value at it. And I also see the commission, they're supposed to be in charge of our government. And I think it's time, we're going to have a showdown where the commissioner's going to have to be held accountable to say, you guys are running the show here. What are you doing? What are you doing to make it better?
I'm going to echo the guy that asked that question 40 years ago.
I understand.
And that's why people get frustrated.
Right.
They've been hearing the same thing, the same tap dance for 40 years.
Right.
Nothing has been accomplished. And they keep telling, when you come back to the table, they're telling you the same thing they told you 40 years ago.
Or wait, or...
But in the meantime, your hair is on fire, you know? So, you know, what do you, if our millage rate is going up because of all these tax exempt properties and all of the services we're offering, and then our demographics are changing, Gwen, in our city, because what's happening is because the high amount of rental properties, these agencies are putting their clients into that housing, which then makes them legitimate residents of our city. So when businesses look at the household or per capita income, well then they catch-22 is they say, well, we need to have the agencies where all the poor people are. But the reason the poor people are there is because they're being placed there. And then we can't get a Dairy Queen on US 1 because they're saying it's too poor.
Or a grocery store.
Or a grocery
in some of the
store,
areas
right.
where people want grocery stores. And when you look at, you go in a department store and you're wondering, why do they have these kind of clothes? And I go somewhere else and they've got better clothes, because they're looking at the demographics of the area. They're figuring that the people are poor, so we can't put high price stuff there because they can't afford it and they won't be there to buy it. So that really is kind of what carries us, unfortunately. And then we've got our high paid, you know, department heads then that get to live outside of the city and help the census demographics in those cities, as opposed to having them here where the taxpayers are paying the salary.
So there are some serious issues, but it's
major.
like, what is our commission doing about it? That's the bottom line these days. And I think the city's at a boiling point where you're saying, 40 years, how much longer do we wait?
But I think the people are going to have to stand up to the commission.
I agree.
It's people are being too silent. They need to go and, as you say, hold the commissioners accountable.
Right.
You elect the commissioners to do a job for the community. And once they get in there, they forget you put them in there. And I think that there's power in the voting box than sitting there and promising, making promises.
Which people have to, that's where we started out, they have to seize that power, you know, seize the moment.
We've got away from that.
And vote.
Here we died, we used to couldn't vote.
Right.
People died, hung by the noose, drowned in ponds, so that we might have the right. I'll never forget, I went to a meeting. I'm not going to call the name of the man called a meeting, but he wanted the blacks to come vote. And he says, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give away free barbecue sandwiches. I was offended.
Right.
Here you have people drowned in ponds, hung by the noose. And you talking about giving somebody a darn barbecue.
You need incentives to get people to show up.
That just...
in some places where they have the highest turnout, they give away hot dogs and, you know...
I tell my members at my church, if you're not registered to vote, you're ignorant.
Well,
if you don't vote, you don't have a right to say anything.
I agree. I think the thing that I'm seeing, though, is where even in my own neighborhood, I have coaxed and cajoled and got residents and business owners to attend these public meetings. And like we're talking about the 40 years, you go and it's delayed or nothing positive happens. And
hoping that nobody show up the next time.
Well, and what's happened is now when I'm asking, you know, my neighbors, are you coming to the next meeting? Like the Ridgewood overlay is going to be at the planning board in November. They're like, God, we've already been to 12 meetings for the last 2 years. When is anything going to happen? So here I'm like saying, you need to participate in your government. They're willing to do it for a period of time, but then it gets to the point where why bother? And I see this in the city that, you know, the city has factions that actually want the different neighborhoods to fight with each other, so they'll just go away.
Divide and conquer.
Right.
Well, you've been listening to Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards. Again, my guests, Pastor Larry T. Edwards, St. John Missionary Baptist Church Incorporated, and Chris Don, who is on the Tree Beautification Advisory Board for the City of Daytona Beach and the downtown, is it downtown?
It's the uptown.
Uptown.
North of downtown.
Let's keep it uptown.
North of downtown.
North of downtown, okay, so it's the uptown
Daytona
neighborhood group. And you guys meet on
The
a Thursday night.
third Thursday of the month at Berean Baptist Church, which is on Madison Avenue.
And the time?
7 to 9 p.m.
Okay,
and it's a potluck affair, so you bring some food and we get to know your neighbors.
And they always have a lot of good food. And they also have, there's a program for the elderly that's getting started for seniors.
And actually it's Berean Baptist Church. Pastor Johnson is helping, and we realize that, you know, although we have all